driving through the streets of Sacramento on the way to the Sacramento Natural Foods Co-op. I've been managing it for the past, 3.5 years, I guess. We've got about 160-something employees there. My job is to be the general manager of the whole shooting match. So I've been doing this type of work since about 1980. It's this community organization, an alternative business structure. That's always what appealed to me.
When Paul and I first met, we were both co-op managers. We were colleagues. I lived in New Mexico at the time, and then Paul went out to California to work in a co-op. He ended up closing that co-op, and he came back. I offered him a place to stay to recover from, not having a place to live.
I feel like I need a hug.
We got biblical. Yeah, we got biblical, 2 recovering Catholics. There was some closed doors in our relationship, as there are in any relationship, but I knew that there was something else, something deeper.
I hadn't really thought.
I don't think that Paul and I ever really intended to live together forever or anything like that, but I knew that I wanted him to deal with whatever that was, whether it be with me or with someone else. He told me what it was, but it was only after we had an argument about his Fiat. His Fiat brought up the issue because I criticized his Fiat. His Fiat was very dear to him.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in about 4 years, so it was a typical Fiat. It kept falling apart all the time. I had so much of my identity and then pride wrapped up in this car after a while. That's a new wrinkle. It does come with the Our Lady of Guadalupe gear shift knob.
Finally, one day I said, why don't you just get a reliable car? And Paul hit the roof, and then I realized he really overreacted to that. He told me then all about the church. It was like I hit some core. I remember just holding him for hours because I wanted to just make it all go away and protect him. I thought Paul had managed to keep his life very together despite such an incredible obstacle in his childhood. He's amazing. He's amazing that he's so together for all of that.
All those Catholic ceremonies. Sheesh. Yeah.
Lee and Hartley reacted as though they wanted to go on the offensive about it in some way or other.
I encouraged him to confront the church.
Going in, it was the first time I had walked into some Catholic office building in a long time. It felt an awful lot like walking into the rectory at St. James, where I was abused. The whole environment was just too eerily reminiscent. It kind of has this power over you, It makes you feel like this little kid again. And there was a nun sitting behind the desk. I was still internalizing all this shame and embarrassment. I didn't really want to walk in and talk to some nun and tell her that I was sexually abused. I started feeling like a cold sweat, like I was going to throw up. When I started telling her the story, she wasn't surprised. It wasn't like she was in shock. It was almost a routine. Their job was to process these claims, and it seemed like I wasn't the first one. I said back in the early 60s, I was at St. James School in Salem, and I was molested by Joseph Birmingham. She clearly knew who I was talking about. She was just kind of like, oh, Joseph Birmingham. I said, if you need this story to be corroborated, there were 3 other priests in the parish at the time. One of them was young. He was the same age as Joe Birmingham. His name was John McCormick. And she said, John B. McCormick? And I said, yeah, it was John B. McCormick. She said, well, he's in the next room. He's my boss. And I said, he's your boss? And she said, yeah, he's in charge of these cases.
My memory of him was he was the young, good-looking priest. One time we went on a ski trip. All the girls were like, whoa, look at this, and he's a priest, and and stuff like that. Always very friendly.
There he was, and he looked very similar. And, oh, Paul, I'm so sorry to hear about this. I remember you as a boy, and I remember your parents. What we want you to do is find a psychiatrist, and we'll pay for some help for a while. And I said, what ever happened to Father Birmingham? And he said, well, I don't know. He said, I know he died. You know, he died a few years ago. I said, you don't know anything about him? And he said, well, no, we never really kept in touch. I knew they were really good friends at St. James. They used to take us to the movies together. They took us skiing together. I assumed that they probably stayed in touch. He said, the only thing I know about him, in 1971, he said, I was at Catholic Charities in Salem, and then I got a call from a parent of one of the boys at St. James. Their son had reported that Father Birmingham either had molested the son or had molested some other kids in the school. I called the pastor of St. James and reported it. He left St. James, and then I really didn't have anything more to do with him. I don't really know what happened to him. I just know he died a few years ago. And he said, I really hope that you're not going to be one of these people who's going to try and sue the church over this, because, you know, that's really not going to be productive. That's just going to make you more angry. He just kept saying, the best thing to do is try to get some help, and we'll help you get the help, and then put this behind you. I've had dreams about Birmingham for years. Back then, the dreams were that Birmingham was alive and he was sort of a threatening figure. I'd be walking with someone I knew and he would walk up and start talking to me. Or even more frightening scenarios. I called McCormick and I said to him, I need to know for sure that he's dead. And you're back in Boston. I wonder if you could get me a copy of his death certificate so I could just have that physical proof. And he said, oh, no, I can't do that. But I can assure you that he's dead because I visited him in the hospital before he died, and I went to his funeral. Wait a minute, when I met you about 2 months ago, you said you had nothing to do with Birmingham after you guys left St. James. That really made me think something's going on here, and these guys aren't dealing straight. I want to get to the bottom of this.